Hello, children of God. This is a study guide for your Unit 1-3 quiz. So we're going to go through this. It's pretty short. The quiz will be 10 questions or less. So let's go ahead and get started. You should use primarily your notes, but you can also use Chapter 29 in your textbook to help you with that. And your homework from Chapter 29. All right, so first up, let's talk about some of this vocabulary. So eros and agape are two of the different types of love. If you remember from Notes 1, we talked about the story of Franny and Frankie. So eros is the romantic desire, a sort of love, when you feel in love with someone, when you care about someone, when you have feelings towards them. That's eros, when you desire them. Agape has more to do with our virtues and our actions. So agape is the self-sacrificial love. So when Jesus is talking about loving your enemies, that's what he's talking about. He doesn't mean have nice feelings for enemies. He means put them first, care for them, even if you don't care about them. That's what agape means. So you can be in a relationship with someone and desire them very much. That would be eros. But if you treat them terribly, then that's not agape. So you're in love with them, but you're not really loving them. You care about them, but you're not caring for them or taking care of them. So that's the difference between eros and agape. Eros is how you feel. Agape is how you actually treat the person. Now, ideally in a relationship, you have both eros and agape in a romantic relationship. You have that romantic and sexual desire, attraction towards that person, and that motivates you to put them first, to take care of them, to have their best interest at heart. And when that happens, we call that chastity. So eros and agape together give you chastity, which is sexual virtue, sexual integrity, using your sexuality in a way that loves your neighbor as yourself. But if you have eros, you have that sexual desire, but you, instead of having agape, instead of having that self-sacrificial love and self-concern for the other person, it's selfish, and you're using that other person for how they make you feel. You can still be in love with them and still have those feelings, but instead of having agape, you have that selfishness and pride. That gives you, instead of giving you chastity, that gives you lust. So when you have eros for someone, when you're in love with them, but you're using them for the way they make you feel, either physically or emotionally, we call that lust, and that's sexual vice, a selfish sexuality. So that's all in Notes 1. If you're confused about that, it's also in your Chapter 29 homework. In Notes 2, we talked about some of the biological reasons why living a life of chastity makes sense, and we talked about these two hormones specifically that humans have, which make it better for us to be monogamous and stick with the same person, the same sexual partner, and not have many sexual partners. And those are oxytocin, which is a bonding hormone. It makes you bonded to the other person and trust them, makes it easier to forgive them. And then vasopressin, which is the hormone that makes you defensive of your spouse and makes you want to protect them and protect them from other people. And those are hormones which bond us to that other person and make it good that we stick with the same person rather than having many sexual partners throughout our life. All right, so number 2, why does the church not advocate the safe sex approach? This is in Notes 3 on the alternative to chastity. And basically, the reason I gave you 3 reasons in the notes. The main one is that it treats sex as if it's only about the physical. It ignores that sex is also a spiritual and a psychological and an emotional thing. Like there's no such thing, the society tells us you can use a condom or birth control or something like that, and you're protecting yourself from STDs and unwanted pregnancy, but there's a lot more going on with sex than just protecting yourself from those physical things. So there's no such thing as a condom for your heart, or a pill that will protect your mind, or a shot that will protect your soul. You still have all those emotional, psychological, and spiritual consequences of sex, even if you're protecting yourself from some of the physical consequences. So safe sex is, it's only safe in protecting you from a couple things. It's like going into a football game and you're wearing knee pads, but you're not wearing a helmet and you're not wearing shoulder pads and all those other things. It's protecting you a little bit in some ways, but overall there's much more that needs to be addressed. It also expresses very little faith in the idea that teens can do the right thing. It kind of says, well, abstinence really would be the best way, but since we know you teenagers are stupid and dumb and you're going to make mistakes, you should, use this protection. Whereas the church says, no, you can be saints. By the grace of God, you can, be young men and women of virtue. We believe in you, and you can do this by the grace of God. 3, contraception has kind of created a selfish attitude towards sex. The sex is more in our society has become less about something that unites a husband and wife and forms a family, and it's more about something that is about my needs. When I feel fulfilled or what I want, it becomes more about the individual and less about the self-gift, the total self-gift. It becomes more about selfishness and less about agape, that's loving your neighbor as yourself. All right, so that's number 2. On the back, we have number 3, the 2 purposes of marriage and sexuality. This is in notes 4 on marriage. One is life, creating new life, just like God can create new life. And the other is love. We can unite ourselves. So the fancy names for these are the unitive and the procreative, but the easy way to remember this is love and life. And again, this is in notes 4 on marriage. Right here, the 2 purposes of marriage. The next question is the 4 vows, which are also here. The 4 vows, and this is if you look on the back of notes 4, we actually have the 4 vows from the marriage ceremony. So free, total, faithful, fruitful. Have you come here freely? Do you give yourself to this person totally? Will you be faithful to them and love them as your spouse? And will you lovingly accept children from God? And those are the 4 vows, and those can kind of be used as a cheat sheet for your conscience anytime you're wondering, would this be wrong? Would this be wrong? And you're wondering how far is too far. You can use those 4 wedding vows as a way of assessing, is it free? Is it total? Is it faithful? Is it fruitful? And, before marriage, any sort of sexual activity is not going to be, completely free, total, faithful, and fruitful. It can be free, it can be consensual, but it can't be a total commitment. You're not going to be totally faithful because, you're probably going to marry somebody else. And it's generally not going to be open to children. Why is sex outside of marriage wrong? In addition to what we talked about in notes 2, the psychological reasons that increases your divorce rate and those sorts of things from a Catholic perspective, from a spiritual perspective, and a theological perspective, it's because it fails the marriage vows. It's saying something with your body that's not true. It's saying with your body is saying, yes, I give myself to you completely, but you're not actually giving yourself to that person completely if it's outside of marriage. So it's a dishonest act. It's a schizophrenic act. You're saying something with your body that's not true of the relationship. It'd be like walking up to a stranger on the street and making out with them. Just the physical would be totally inappropriate for the level of the relationship. So that's why sex outside of marriage is wrong. But sex within marriage, on the other hand, is a very important role. It consummates the vows. So every time a married couple has sex, they are renewing their wedding vows. They are speaking their wedding vows with their very body. And so that's what the meaning of sex is supposed to be. All right, and I think that covers all your questions. If you have further questions, you can come see me or shoot me an email. Good luck on your test.